This is Larry Jordan, the host of the Digital Production Buzz. The following interview is an excerpt from a recent program. To hear the entire program, visit digitalproductionbuzz.com. Ned Soltz is an author, editor, educator, and consultant on all things related to digital video. He's also a contributing editor to Digital Video Magazine, a moderator on 2Pop and Creative Cow forums, and best of all, a regular correspondent here on The Buzz. Hello, Ned. Welcome back.
Hi, Larry. It's good to be back, and we've got to add one more thing to the credits now.
I'm afraid to ask.
Once again, I've just started writing once again for RedSharkNews.com.
You have got to practice getting more sleep, Guy. This is just ridiculous.
Sleep is overrated.
Ned, just when I thought it was safe to get back into the water, the whole camera section of our industry seems to be going wild. What's going on?
It's going absolutely crazy. It is too segmented. I've said it on this show. I've said it in print. There are just too many cameras, and there is absolutely too much confusion. So what I'd like to try to do with you tonight is maybe in our discussion, we can sort of flesh out what are the different segments of the camera market. Who are they targeted toward, and what type of user should look toward what specific type of camera, if not specific brand.
I think that's a perfectly good idea, and I want to start with the action camera market, because recently GoPro ran into some headwinds when sales didn't meet expectations. Does this mean the action cam market is in trouble?
The action cam market is again segmented, because you've got the GoPro. Now you've got the DJI Osmo, which, although not necessarily waterproof, is really taking the camera world by storm in that action camera market because of that wonderful built-in gimbal. I think GoPro stumbled as well because you sort of reach a point where you get market saturation. Now, there are a couple of others. Let me see if I can reach over right here. Here it is. Let me hold up the box right here. This is an AEE S71T action camera. Let's see if we can get this here without the reflection of my light.
You are just incredible holding props up. You and Vanna White, I think, are two.
Oh, yes, I tell you, she's got better legs. That's the difference. Nonetheless, that's an example of it. That's a 2.7K camera. It's not a 4K camera like the GoPro, but it has a longer battery life, better Wi-Fi connectivity. Then there's another little one, which I've got packed away in a box right now that I can't find, which is called eCamera. And this is actually a couple of young entrepreneurs and engineers in Shenzhen. And you've really got to admire these kids. They started with a Kickstarter campaign. Big camera dealer Adorama kicked some money into that. And they produced a camera with a micro four thirds sensor, a micro four thirds adapter. And we're talking something barely larger than the GoPro. I've been testing it. There were some firmware issues with the first revision of the firmware, and it wasn't auto-focusing with a little Panasonic pancake lens that I had on it, but they said, please don't say anything bad about it until we reissue the firmware. So I think the firmware is now fixed, and that's a cute little camera. It's about $500. It's segmented, it's niched. All the other dealers have it other than Adorama. But I mean, GoPro's got competition right now, and they've got market saturation.
So the action camera segment may not be dead, but we're seeing that it's starting to max out in terms of market penetration.
Exactly, and I was going to add as well, Sony just introduced a new action camera at CES. There's rumors that there's a 4K action camera due from Sony at some near point. I think it's segmented. And that's why GoPro is seeing a drop in sales.
Okay, so we've got the action camera segment. Would you consider DSLR a segment or a function?
DSLR is a segment, which I belive is dead in terms of future development, because I think it's moving more toward mirrorless right now.
Now,
particularly.
Well, slow down. You've given me two big things. You think it's dead simply because of the removal of the mirror, or dead because video cameras are responding?
I think it's dead because video cameras are responding, and I'm not seeing any great innovations coming along right now in the DSLR world. I mean, that doesn't mean that people are going to immediately throw away their Canon 7Ds and Canon 5Ds. You still see a lot of those out there being shot, and they're still producing very good work. But they're really not going too terribly much further. As an example, today Canon announced the 80D, which again is sort of in the high enthusiast price range, let's put it that way, at a $1,200 price point for body only. And the really only innovation right now in terms of their video is it's going to do 1080 60p as opposed to 1080 30p. And that's about the extent of it. And even in the Canon 1DX, 1DX Mark II, the $5,000 plus camera they just introduced a couple of weeks ago, that's going to have 4K internally, but it's still with a motion JPEG codec. So it's really a high-end still camera that has some incidental video capabilities. We're not seeing the development, and Nikon's not been behind it. But on the other hand, Sony is just going absolutely great guns with their mirrorless cameras.
Okay, hold it.
Panasonic GH4. Yeah,
Hold it, stop. I want to get to mirrorless like in 20 seconds, but just a quick answer. Do you think that the DSLRs are being constrained in terms of development because they're recording to the chip? Because the chip itself doesn't have a high data transfer rate. Do you think that's constraining them?
I don't think it is, because the mirrorless cameras are recording 4K 60 to these SDXC chips.
Okay, so what makes mirrorless? So what makes mirrorless so attractive?
Because they're a smaller form factor, because the mirror really isn't that essential anymore, because you'd really rather see an electronic viewfinder rather than something that's optical and get a better view of what you're looking at. As well, because more and more now, particularly with Sony and Panasonic as well, you have various kinds of logarithmic recording options that are there, and you want to be able to view it either log, or you want to be able to apply a LUT to it, and that requires the electronic viewfinder. Greater versatility, and because you're taking that mirror out, which is unnecessary, you can have a shallower flange depth of lens and have much more adaptability to different lenses of differing manufacturers with the mirrorless camera. But also the size factor is a major factor.
Well, in a second, I want to talk about, say, 4 different categories of shooting and help you pick the right camera for each category. But I was thinking, the big buzz that's going on now at HPA is the impact of high dynamic range video. Are you seeing cameras starting to take HDR into account? And what do you think the impact of HDR is going to be on camera technology?
Already, so many of these cameras are already shooting dynamic ranges of 12, 14, 15 stops. I think that's pretty much been there for a while. I mean, even the Sony F3 several years ago was still shooting between 12 and 14 stops of dynamic range. So the dynamic range has already been built into those cameras. But now we're seeing cameras designed more and more for it. I mean, my favorite that was just announced in the recent days is the new Panasonic VariCam LT. In that higher market segment, I'm really big on that, and they are really looking to that for HDR production. But the question now is more HDR delivery. And I believe we will begin to see that in consumer sets over the next couple of years. Specifically with at last NAB, we were raising that same question. Do we want more pixels or better pixels? And if I have the choice of more pixels or better pixels, I'd take a look at better pixels.
And I would agree too. I think once you see HDR, resolution becomes irrelevant. But here's the question then: if cameras are shooting HDR video, because you're saying they've got the extra stops of dynamic range, why aren't we seeing it in our pictures?
Well, we're not seeing it in our pictures because the display technology is still catching up to it, because we still haven't exactly standardized on an HDR standard. So there are several competing standards that are out there. and SMPTE has not made its decision in terms of what it wants to cast its fate with. And we've got Dolby, we've got Sony, and I'm, at the moment I'm not up to what every single standard is and what those technological differences, electronic differences might be. But we first need the standard, then we need the manufacturers to begin to bring that to market. And the manufacturers already have conflicting signals because we're trying to move to 4K. At the same time, we're trying to think about 8K down the road, which isn't that far down the road. And then HDR comes into the picture. And what are the manufacturers actually going to do and promote? And then how is that content going to be delivered? So that's going to take a couple of years to work itself out.
Okay, so I want to discuss 4 different shooting scenarios in the time that we've got left. Which camera would you recommend for action or outdoor shooting?
I still like GoPros.
Still GoPro.
I still like GoPro. I still like the sensor. I still like the whole ecosystem of GoPro. I like the versatility. I even like the little GoPro Studio app, which gets it into a cineform codec. And flattens out the image. It's ProTune if you really want to shoot its version of log. I'm still big on GoPro in that action camera segment. Okay.
How about run and gun videography?
Ooh, you got a lot of options there, and it's all going to depend upon your particular budget. I like the Sony FS5.
Which is what? How much in price?
That's about in the $6,000 range.
Okay.
The FS7, the $8,000 range. But the FS5 is a wonderful run and gun camera.
Okay. How about weddings?
Weddings, I would still go for that Sony FS5. Something that could be run and gun in weddings too is the JVC 300. That just doesn't get enough love. I think it's a magnificent camera. JVC just isn't getting the love that it deserves with it, particularly because of its streaming capabilities, which are about the strongest of cameras in that segment. I think also good for weddings might be the Panasonic DVX 200. That as well is not getting enough love. It's a different kind of camera. It's a micro four thirds sensor. It's fixed lens, but it is doing 4K. And we still shouldn't forget in the wedding segment the Canon C100s, because that still has excellent autofocus capability, although a little long in the tooth on codec.
Okay, scripted filmmaking.
Scripted filmmaking, well, low budget. I would never count out Blackmagic. I mean, if you're doing scripted filmmaking and you're really at a very, very low budgetary point of view, you can coax some wonderful images out of the Blackmagic cameras of all size. If budget is no object at all, still the Arri Alexa is king, and a Mira is a close second to that Alexa. But I also really like the Sony F55s, which Sony keeps enhancing, but that Vericam LT from Panasonic, I think, has just tremendous potential, both in scripted as well as B cameras to larger, more expensive cameras, and as well to higher-end documentary and field production work. That's an amazing piece.
I've been taking notes. These are wonderful. What I'm most interested in is, with the exception of the Arris and the Vericams, most of the cameras you're recommending are below 10K. True?
I think so. Yeah, I think you can get a lot of camera below 10K. To put in my personal plug, I own a Sony FS7. So here we've got an $8,000 camera with the $2,000 back for ProRes or for batteries. And for 10K, I consider myself as having a very decent production camera that's used a lot, whether I shoot it or rent it out to folks, in a lot of corporate work. It's been used in some scripted work. My FS7's been used by MTV. For concert work, I think it's a very versatile camera, and at $10,000, it's delivering a magnificent image, and that's not the only one in that $10,000 range that can do it. In other words, I think it's the technology is there in all price ranges, and now it's just the creativity of the operator.
We've got about a minute left. So the question I want to wrap up with is, what's the most important criteria to keep in mind when you're deciding which camera to use for your next project? What's like the first top 3 things to think about?
How much budget do you have? What do you want to spend? What do you want to achieve in terms of final deliverable product? And finally, what are your total production workflows going to be in terms of media delivery, ease of use, the whole pipeline. But certainly, I think your budget is the first, because all the cameras are good. You really have to look at your budget and then assess which camera fills the need the best, and which image you like the best personally. They're all good images. Which image do you like better?
So we look at the budget, we look at image quality, we look at deliverable, and we look at workflow.
Workflow, yeah.
Ned, for people that want to keep track of all this stuff, this has been a great segment. Where can they go on the web to see what you're thinking today?
Well, you can first of all look at redsharknews.com or creativeplanetnetworks.com or tvtechnology.com. Those are the three sites in which my writing will appear.
Red Shark and TV Technology and Creative Planet?
And Creative Planet, yes.
Yes. There's just no rest for the wicked. Ned Soltz, contributing editor for just about everybody that has print. Ned, thanks for joining us today. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Larry. Always a pleasure.
And you take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
If you'd like to see more videos like this one, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. To stay connected and receive updates from The Buzz, sign up for our free weekly newsletter now. Or you can learn more about us on our website. And thanks for watching The Digital Production Buzz.